All right. Hello. I think I'm going live, but yeah. Welcome back to the Faith Unaltered podcast. My name is Dale. I'm not a usual host of the show, but um, we had our scheduled show here live at 7 o'clock, and none of the hosts are here. Neither David nor Tyler are here. Um, yeah, I don't know. Maybe because of the weather, something's happened. I'm not getting any emails from them, but obviously, just for the sake of the audience, for of their audience, you guys are expecting a show, so maybe I'll just do like a quick uh, live show so that you guys have something, and then hopefully in time the regular hosts will actually show up and be here. But yeah, so basically what we were doing here is the Zeitgeist podcast. So we were looking at the movie Zeitgeist that came out back in 2007, and there have been basically a lot of people have fallen for this. Bill Maher from Religulous, for example, has gone for this theory that Jesus is just a pagan myth. He's copied from a bunch of pagan myths dating thousands of years before Jesus, and yeah, that's what we're looking at that movie and kind of going over that. So yeah, what I'll do is I'll play some clips, starting with the Zeitgeist. Let me share my screen here. Zeitgeist. All right. We basically left off last time with Krishna. So I'll just play that little clip for you guys.
Krishna of India, born of the Virgin Devaki with a star in the east signaling his coming. He performed miracles with his disciples and, upon his death, was resurrected. Dionysius of Greece, born of a virgin on December 25th, was a traveling teacher who performed miracles such as turning water into wine. He was referred to as the King of Kings, God's only begotten Son, the Alpha and Omega, and many others. And, upon his death, he was resurrected. Mithra of Persia, born of a virgin on December 25th, he had 12 disciples and performed miracles, and upon his death was buried for 3 days and thus resurrected. He was also referred to as the Truth, the Light, and many others. Interestingly, the sacred day of worship of Mithra was Sunday. The fact of the
Okay, so I think we can pause it at that point. So let me stop sharing. So that's the Zeitgeist claim in terms of the next three pagan gods that we're going to be looking at. So we've got Krishna, the Hindu god Krishna, and then we have the Greek god Dionysus, the god of wine, and then finally Mithra or Mithros. So yeah, I'm going to play couple clips. Again, still nothing in the email from David or Tyler. So yeah, I'm just going to continue on and kind of spend some time going over some clips, assessing these ones. So here's one with the Hindu god. All right. All right, so this is evaluating Krishna. Yeah, so basically, as you can tell from this clip, this is absolutely right. Krishna's dad, Devaki, was not a virgin at all. In fact, she had sex. So her and her husband, or the father of Krishna, were imprisoned in a dungeon, and they had a total of 7 kids conceived in the normal way. Before having Krishna and that sort of thing. So it was not a virgin birth. Obviously, it's nonsense. He was not born on December 25th. We have Hindu scholars who have, for example, one of the world's experts in India, Dr. Masuda Narayana from the University of Bombay. She said, look, she's never heard of any Krishna ever being born of a virgin on December 25th. In fact, he was born on the 8th day of the waning moon in the month that comes between August 15th and September 14th in the Gregorian calendar. And in terms of a star in the east, that was his next claim. That's just total bunk. What happened is that the stars, plural, were twinkling at the time Krishna was born. That is nothing like Jesus in terms of the Star of Bethlehem, singular, that served as a special supernatural sign for Jesus there. Okay, so I see someone in the comments. Amir is saying Christians altered it. There's this comment there. So yeah, I'm not sure what you mean. Like Christians just slightly altered it. I would say that that's not true. I think it's a totally original claim. Just because stars are involved, obviously the celestial bodies for ancient peoples in general were special, right? They provided portents for special events and that sort of thing. But to suggest that there's any connection between the stars twinkling in the skies when Krishna was born and then, Jewish people living in the first century had any causal connection between that peril, knew the story of Krishna, and then just slightly tweaked it to say, oh, well, we won't say the stars were twinkling. We had a special star, the Star of Bethlehem. That's not true at all, I would say. And obviously there's no death and resurrection at all. He was not crucified. He was killed by being shot with an arrow in the heel by hunters and that sort of thing. Now, finally, the most devastating blow is that, well, guess what? Even if there are certain superficial parallels, so for example, performing miracles was one of the things that the Zeitgeist said. Sure, maybe in the first place, there are no miracles from Krishna in any text written prior to Jesus and that sort of thing. However, Hindus are notorious for, after the time of Jesus, centuries after the fact, they will incorporate certain aspects copied directly from Christianity. And this isn't a secret. I mean, all Hindu scholars admit this. They're an inclusive religion. They're like, wow, this story of Jesus sounds interesting. Let's incorporate it into our story. And I even had on my own show, Real Seekers, a former Hindu named Omar Fakuri, and he was on the show, and he, in fact, admitted that his specific sect within Hinduism, they copied from Christianity centuries after the fact. So I think that covers it in terms of the Krishna myth. Now what I'll do, we'll turn to Dionysus, and I'll play another little clip. Let me just double check the emails. Still nothing from David and Tyler. So sorry about this, guys. You guys are stuck with me only, but all right, cool. So let's take a look at Dionysus. All right. So here's a video. Actually, I just realized you guys can't hear that, can you? Probably. So let me share again and try to set up the sound. Oh, okay. Yeah, you can. Share system audio. Okay, so here is a little clip on Dionysus.
And now it's time for Gods in the News. Here with today's report, your host, Warner Winkerton.
Good evening. Welcome to Gods in the News. I'm Warner Winkerton. It's election season again, and the gods are crowding in for the attention of all the masses who are looking for a savior and Lord. As a public service, this program is interviewing all the divine candidates. Today we have with us one of the, shall we say, more colorful of the group.
That's right, Warner. I'm Dionysus Divine. I'm the god of wine who's so handsome and fine.
Woo!
Yes, Dionysus. Thank you. You've claimed in some of your literature to, and I quote, give the creeping heebie-jeebies to that Jesus cat. Would you mind explaining that for our audience?
Well, Warner, let me tell you something about that Jesus cat. All that stuff about him turning water into wine, being born of a virgin, being crucified, he got that from me, baby. Check this out. This here's a picture of my mama, Simile. She was a virgin when she had me, and you can take that to the bank, baby.
Yes. Well, I hate contradicting our guests, but according to my sources, Mr. Dionysus, the chief story of your origin says that your dear mother was impregnated by Zeus in the form of a lightning bolt. That's not exactly what I'd call virgin, sir.
Let me tell you another story, okay? You know the story of how Jesus turned water into wine, right? Who do you think gave him that idea in the first place? I'm the god of wine, Warner, baby, and nobody, I mean nobody, gets wine from water like Dionysus.
Well, I confess that your association with wine is a well-known fact, sir, and I do see that you have more than a passing acquaintance with it. However, according to the historians I have consulted, that story of you turning water into wine dates to a time after Jesus lived. Can you comment on that?
Oh, it does? Well, I gotta know the story. Let me tell you about this one. Know who that is on the cross, Warner? Yeah, baby, that's me, the one and only. Dionysus hung on a cross for your sins, little man, and that's a fact.
I've seen that picture before, sir. I believe it's an artifact recognized by modern scholars to be a forgery. Well, it appears our guest has some thinking to do, as do we all.
So as you guys can see, Dionysus is also a huge failure in terms of the Zeitgeist theory there. There's no relation or causal parallel at all in terms of Dionysus. All right, cool. So the last god that is an alleged parallel, according to the Zeitgeist theory, is the god Mithra. And as we're going to see here, there's another clip. One thing about Dionysus, another thing about that wasn't in that clip, is again the timing of Dionysus in terms of the claimed resurrection from the dead. Oh, he rose 3 days later. Total historical horse trash. You're being lied to. So I have a little clip with Gary Habermas and Tim Stratton. Just to prove that, let me just bring that up here. All right, so share my screen. Share audio. All right, so here's the little clip about the timing of Dionysus's claimed resurrection.
Absolutely no source for the title King of Kings, which is a generic term in the first place, and secondly does not even suit Dionysus, since Zeus was the head god according to mythology. Nor does the title Only Begotten Son suit Dionysus, since Zeus had several offspring including Athena, Apollo, Artemis, Hermes, Persephone, Dionysus, Perseus, Heracles, Helen, Minos, and Muses. James Fraser, author of The Golden Bough, is cited in Zeitgeist for this claim of the resurrection. With such an array of options, it may be no surprise that at least one variation bears a superficial resemblance to what happened to Jesus. Still, this vague description does not match with the Jewish concept of resurrection.
You're going to have to give me a date for the earliest inscription, because Dionysus, I don't know anybody who thinks Dionysus is pre-Christian, not the resurrection portion.
Okay, well, all I can tell you is that the myth is that he is torn apart by the Titans, eaten, and he is raised from the dead.
But what is the date?
I don't know the date of the, as I said, of the original. As far as any writings we have, I know that with the myths, the Greek myths, most of our Greek myths, we do have from later collections, except we know they were told earlier because we have the vase paintings depicting them going way back in time.
But the question is is there a resurrection? And since we don't have any resurrection predating the 2nd century, all the way to the 4th century are the earliest ones, 2nd to 4th, we can say, well, maybe there's a resurrection there, but there's no data.
Even Tim Callahan, the skeptic you just saw defending Dionysus, admits there is no crucifixion. Even the skeptic Tim Callahan critiques the movie Zeitgeist, saying, perhaps the worst aspect of part 1 of Peter Joseph's internet film Zeitgeist is that some of what it asserts is true. Unfortunately, this material is liberally and sloppily mixed with material that is only partially true, and much that is plainly and simply bogus. The evidence for Jesus as a real historical personage, though meager, is solid.
So that's from even Tim Callahan, who is kind of advancing this so-called parallel of Jesus' resurrection there. So you can see it's just the Zeitgeist is not doing too well in terms of its alleged parallels with pagan myths. Okay, so the last one on the list is the Persian god and then later Roman god Mithra or Mithros. And so I'll play a clip, and then I have some things to say about the Mithra. So let me once again share the screen, share audio. All right, so this is a clip with Christian apologist Mary Jo Sharp talking about Mithra's supposed virgin birth.
So it works that way. Okay, so that's Horus. So that's one down. Let's go to Mithra and what's going on there. And this is birth from the rock is the note that I have here. So that just sounds very fascinating.
Yeah, he's my favorite one because so what you see if you watch Zeitgeist is you'll see a BC dating on Mithras, and then you'll see all of these comparisons to Jesus, including a virgin birth. Well, the problem is that what Peter Joseph is doing is he's using a god from an ancient time from Persia. He's using either Mitra or Mithra and comparing and using that story of one of those two gods and comparing it to the Roman god Mithras, who was in existence at the time. His story was in existence at the time of Jesus. And so that in itself is intellectually dishonest to use that background in order to date Mithras. But Mithras is a Roman god, and his story, if you're going to compare the one that was around the time of Jesus, he's actually a god of the underworld. He jumps out of the underworld with a dagger in one hand and a torch in the other. The torch is used to guide his way to to the upper realm here. And the dagger was used to subdue all the creatures of the earth once he got out of that rock. But his birth is actually, he jumps out of a rock on the banks.
It's actually a door.
A sacred station.
Yeah.
So as you can tell here, so in terms of saying Mithra was born of a virgin, is just totally ridiculous. And he was born of a rock. So yeah, sure. What does Zeitgeist do? They try to say, well, technically speaking, a rock is a virgin, right? So it all makes sense, doesn't it? Come on now. Let's be honest here. You're just being biased and desperate if that's the best you can do to show there's an alleged parallel between Mithra on that front. Obviously, in terms of the other parallels that Zeitgeist says, yes, he was not crucified nor resurrected. That's just total lies. There's also this confusion between the Persian god Mithra that dates to 500 BC, the time of Zeitgeist. So it's around in the Achaemenid period of the Persian Empire. And that's totally different, has no bearing to the Roman Mithra. The god Mithra became popular in the Roman Empire after Jesus, about 200 years after Jesus. So there's obviously no connection there in terms of early Christians living in the 1st century wanting to copy the Persian version of the Mithra myth or anything like that. No, it entered the Roman Empire much later on. Hey, Jezza, nice to see you. All right, awesome. Cool. So yeah, with that said, let me see what time it is. Okay, so I think just to give the people that are here live we'll go through a refuting video with commentary just for the next 20 minutes or so. If Tyler and David haven't shown up by then, I can shut this down, and I think that will give you guys good enough. Okay, so Jezza is saying they are all miraculous birth tropes, but a miraculous birth is not surprising for a god. Yeah, that's a good point. Sure, I wouldn't say all of them are miraculous, but definitely a lot of the gods. Mithra being born of a rock, that's miraculous, right? So, yeah, you could make a loose parallel that there are some gods have miraculous births, but that's Zeitgeist is saying no, it's a specifically virgin birth, and as we're going to find out later on, the reason they're doing that is because they want to link it to astronomy. Basically, Virgo, the Virgin, is one of the constellations. So it's kind of got to be a virgin, otherwise the theory of Zeitgeist totally fails. But yeah, definitely other gods have miraculous births. Yep, cool. All right. So let me just find this spot here. Just give me a second. Now we're kind of getting into the second part. So this is where like the how does these pagan myths relate to the stars and the sun and stuff like that? Where does all of that come from? So let me bring that up. Share screen. Share audio. All right. So
Birth sequence is completely astrological. The star in the east is Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, which on December 24th aligns with the three brightest stars in Orion's belt. These three bright stars in Orion's belt are called today what they were called in ancient times, the Three Kings. And the Three Kings and the brightest star, Sirius, all point to the place of the sunrise on December 25th. This is why the Three Kings follow the star in the east in order to locate the sunrise, the birth of the sun.
Once again, even if you were to label the three stars in Orion's belt the Three Kings, it would be irrelevant to the Bible, as is December 25th irrelevant. Though the Magi, not kings, presented three gifts, nowhere do the Bible writers make an issue of there being three of them in number. Apparently, it was insignificant to the Gospel writers, and so it is to us as well. This entire astrological premise is problematic. Not only does Sirius align with the three stars in Orion's belt 365 days a year, and not only in December, but they are more or less aligned to the sun for almost all of the winter months. There is nothing at all special about December 25th. In fact, it is by December 25th that Orion is almost totally below the horizon. It would be much more accurate of Zeitgeist if this event was said to happen a month or so earlier.
So that's something that I find very interesting, right? Is because, the Three Kings, they're following the star, Sirius, the star in the east, and they're going towards the sun on December 25th. Sounds like Jesus, right? But obviously it's nonsense. It actually doesn't line up properly in terms of following the sun and going towards the sun. You see at that part,
Not only does Sirius align with the three stars in Orion's belt 300 and it would be.
So you can see it's kind of misaligned. It's underneath the sun. If you go in November, then it points directly at the sun. So that would be a much better fit. So you can tell it doesn't work on that front. All right, let's continue on. Got about 15 minutes. So
be much more accurate of Zeitgeist if this event was said to happen a month or so earlier.
The Virgin Mary is the constellation Virgo, also known as Virgo the Virgin. Virgo in Latin means virgin. Virgo is also referred to as the house of bread, and the representation of Virgo is a virgin holding a sheaf of wheat. This house of bread and its symbol of wheat represents August and September, the time of harvest. In turn, Bethlehem, in fact, literally translates to house of bread. Bethlehem is thus a reference to the constellation Virgo, a place in the sky, not on earth.
Bethlehem indeed means house of bread. Nevertheless, there is no basis for concluding that Bethlehem was a fictitious place which was fabricated based upon the constellation Virgo in the sky. The existence of Bethlehem is attested by biblical and extra-biblical sources. First, Old Testament authors prior to the 1st century mention Bethlehem. Also, the Jewish historian Josephus mentions Bethlehem as the location where King David was anointed to be future king of Israel. J.B. Hennessy reports of the archaeological evidence demonstrating that Bethlehem was inhabited during the Iron Age in the 1st century. He recorded, "Perhaps most important has been the isolation in 1969 of the Iron Age tell. The limits of the Iron Age occupation, while not entirely clear, appear to be on the flat surface of the slopes immediately beneath the basilica and to the east. The work was carried out by Israel Archaeological Society. Bethlehem appears to have been a major area of occupation from the Paleolithic period.
So it's just to kind of pause it for copyright purposes, but it's incredible. Not only is Jesus based on these astronomical bodies and stuff, but they even say that Bethlehem is a myth, as a place. It didn't exist and stuff. So you can see it's quite ludicrous. There's not a PhD historian, archaeologist in the entire world, whether atheist, Christian, whatever, that would doubt the existence of Bethlehem. So yeah. All right, continue on. Oops.
Former astrologer and author of Spellbound, The Paranormal Seduction of Today's Kids, Marcia Montenegro wrote, "You can't just make a story out of names like Virgo, Leo, Taurus, etc. And why doesn't the story begin with Aries? If it did, then Leo comes before Virgo. Yet Leo is supposedly Jesus, the Lion of Judah. It seems it would come after Virgo, not before."
So that's just kind of a common sense point, right? Obviously, if Virgo is meant to be the Virgin Mary, and she gives birth to Jesus, who is known as the Lion of Judah, that's one of his titles. So then, yeah, the Leo in astronomy comes before Virgo in the zodiac signs, but it should be the opposite, because first came Mary, she gave birth to the Lion of Judah, to Jesus. So this doesn't match at all.
Story.
There's another very interesting phenomenon that occurs around December 25th, or the winter solstice. From the summer solstice to the winter solstice, the days become shorter and colder. And from the perspective of the northern hemisphere, the sun appears to move south and get smaller and more scarce. The shortening of the days and the expiration of the crops when approaching the winter solstice symbolize the process of death to the ancients. It was the death of the sun. And by December 22nd, the sun's demise was fully realized. For the sun, having moved south continually for 6 months, makes it to its lowest point in the sky. Here a curious thing occurs. The sun stops moving south, at least perceivably, for 3 days. And during this 3-day pause, the sun resides in the vicinity of the Southern Cross, or Crux, constellation. And after this time, on December 25th, the sun moves 1 degree, this time north, foreshadowing longer days, warmth, and spring.
Anybody with a simple astrology program can confirm for themselves that during the lifetime of Jesus, or in any other time for that matter, that when the sun rises, it is nowhere near the Southern Cross. The idea that the sun rises in the Southern Cross constellation is ridiculous. Dr. Noel Swerdlow is professor of astronomy and astrophysics at the University of Chicago. He also specialized in the study of the practice of astronomy in antiquity through the 17th century. He states, "That crux, the Southern Cross, was not recognized as a separate constellation in antiquity because, as seen from the Mediterranean, it is low on the southern horizon and is surrounded on 3 sides by the stars of Centaurus, which is a large prominent constellation. And the 4 bright stars of Crux are included as stars of Centaurus in Ptolemy's star catalog. It is only when you go farther to the south, so that the Crux is higher in the southern sky, that it becomes prominent as a group of stars by itself. So its recognition had to wait until the southern voyages of the 16th century. Thus,
that's just amazing, right? So like apparently all these pagan myths understood, right? The sun would go on December 22nd and then die on this Southern Cross, quote unquote, die on the Southern Cross. In other words, it would stay still for 3 days and then the days would start getting longer and longer, starting December 25th, symbolizing resurrecting from the dead. But yet, not only is the sun nowhere near this southern cross at all, so that's just a total lie on Zeitgeist's part, but additionally, the ancient people didn't even know, even the medieval people didn't even know about the existence of this constellation until they went to the southern hemisphere with their sea voyages in the 16th century with Christopher Columbus and what's the other guy? I want to say Ferdinand. This is just complete ridiculousness on the part of the Zeitgeist. All right, I'll play a little bit more and then I might stop after this. So hang on.
The Southern Cross was not even discovered or recognized until the 16th century, long after the first century writers of the New Testament.
So maybe that's a good place to stop. Let me check with the audience if you guys want me to keep. Well, what do you guys want? Do you guys want me to keep going for the ones in the audience for a little bit more, or do you want me to stop and then end the broadcast, and then hopefully when David and Tyler are back, we can like resume and just kind of re-go over what we did? You guys in the audience have all the power, so you want me to keep going, or are you guys good? Okay. All right, so no one's responding then. All right, well, I guess it's up to me, bro. Okay, cool. So thanks, Ringo. So I guess okay, no problem. All right, cool. So yeah, I think I'll keep going just a little bit more. Again, I don't want to go too far into it because I know that David and Tyler will want to have their say on some of the stuff we're going over in this one. So yeah, we'll do a little bit more. So hang on. Oops. Share the screen, share sound. All right, let's keep going.
And thus it was said, the Son died on the cross, was dead for 3 days, only to be resurrected or born again.
Christians have never said anything like this, that the Son, S-U-N, died on the cross. Maybe Peter Joseph wants us to think ancient religions said this, but they did not either, and there is likewise no reference or source for such a saying.
Now, probably the most obvious of all the astrological symbolism around Jesus regards the 12 disciples. They are simply the 12 constellations of the zodiac, which Jesus, being the Son, travels about with.
The source for this claim is author and skeptic Acharya S., who alleges the Son's followers or disciples are the 12 signs of the zodiac through which the Son must pass. But Jesus did not pass through his 12 disciples in any fashion similar to the zodiac. If the Bible was based off the zodiac, we would expect to see the similar movement of Jesus through the disciples. Furthermore, the 12 disciples were most certainly assigned by Jesus because of the 12 tribes of Israel, which Zeitgeist also alleges is symbolic of the zodiac. But the book of Genesis was written approximately in 1000 BC and contains the story of the 12 tribes of Israel, which would have occurred even earlier. The division into the 12 zodiacal signs did not occur until the Babylonians made the divisions in the 5th century BC. Therefore, reading astrology into the 12 tribes upon which the apostles of Jesus were based is impossible, because the 12 tribes existed long before the division of the 12 signs of the zodiac. Astronomer J. Pasakoff confirms, the Babylonians divided the zodiac into 12 constellations in the 5th century BC. So the only evidence that remains for this claim is the number 12. If we want to accept their allegations on this, however, we also need to accept that Dunkin' Donuts is owned by an astrologer, since you get a discount when you buy a dozen donuts. Grocery stores are also owned by astrologers, since they sell you eggs by the dozen. Even our legal system must be influenced by astrology, since there are 12 jurors. Unlike fictitious myths and legends associated with astrology, we have much historical evidence that the 12 apostles were indeed real historical people. For example, In 95 AD, Clement wrote, Peter, through unrighteous envy, endured not one or two, but numerous labors when he had at length suffered martyrdom, departed to the place of glory due to him.
In fact, the number 12 is replete throughout the Bible.
First of all, Zeitgeist stacks this list of 12s by repetitions to make it look more impressive than it actually is. The 12 tribes of Israel, 12 sons of Jacob, and 12 great patriarchs are all the same 12. There is no difference. There are 12 judges of Israel if one was to count, but the Bible never makes any issue or significance out of it. There are actually 17 Old Testament prophets, not 12. Zeitgeist missed this figure by 5. One can only wonder where they got the idea of there being 12 kings of Israel. If referring to the northern kingdom of Israel, there were 19 kings, and there were also 19 kings in the southern kingdom plus one queen. This is not including the 3 kings of Israel before the kingdom was divided. If you add these numbers together, you do not get 12. If you subtract, multiply, or divide these numbers, you cannot get 12. And no mention or reference is made in the Bible to 12 princes. If the king's sons are in view here, then Zeitgeist is way off, for many of the 41 kings had numerous sons, like King Ahab, for example, had 70 sons.
Coming back to the cross of the zodiac, the figurative life of the sun, this was not just an artistic expression or tool to track the sun's movement. It was also a pagan spiritual symbol, the shorthand of which looked like this. This is not a symbol of Christianity. It is a pagan adaptation of the cross of the zodiac.
What Zeitgeist refers to as the cross of the zodiac is actually the wheel of the zodiac, which has no relationship to a Roman crucifixion, the way in which Jesus was killed. To extrapolate 2 perpendicular lines from the zodiac wheel and conclude that Romans used this as their motivation to crucify criminals is preposterous. It was not until Christianity became paganized that the cross image came to be thought of as a Christian symbol. Crosses in churches were introduced in AD 431, and the uses of crosses in steeples came about in AD 586.
Now, the Bible reflects, broadly speaking, a symbolic movement through 3.
All right. Just to stay safe, because again, this isn't my podcast. I think I will stop at this point. Okay. So I did get an email from Tyler saying that David apparently said he wasn't going to do it tonight. So thanks for letting me know, guys. But anyways, I gave the audience who was here a little something, a little teaser. So at least you got something on Zeitgeist tonight. And yeah, we'll pick it up with David and Tyler on a future date. But math, I'm beat. All right, cool. So thank you very much for listening, and have a very Merry Christmas, everyone. It should be a good time, and I'll see you guys next week whenever David and Tyler are free. All right, take care.